Kuf Mem He. Hashtika miadvorim. Omar Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Kol Yamai Gadalti Ben Chachamim. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says regarding shtika, which is being quiet. Kol Yamai, all of my days, Gadalti Ben Chachamim. I was raised, I grew up among wise men. His family was a family of scholars. V'lo matzasi leguf tov. And I didn't find something good for the body, el shtika, more than being quiet. That's quite interesting. You might say, being quiet, being tranquil is good for one's mind or for one's psyche, but for the body, it's interesting. Lo matzasi leguf tov el shtika. And of course you could say that the point is that if a person is quiet, so then he's tranquil, in which case his mind is at rest and his body will also be relaxed. But then it should have just said, I didn't find something good for a person like shtika, and it would be good in all ways. It's good for the body. Quite interesting. I don't have a wonderful explanation here as to about what this means. Anybody have any idea?
I think it depends on the situation. Sometimes it might not be good for the body when you want to say something.
Yeah.
But you're not going to say it because you're going to stay quiet.
Yeah. You're penting. Yeah, you're penting it in.
Yeah.
We find the pasuk says, "Tole eretz al blima." The pasuk says that God hangs the world on nothingness, and the sages explain that to mean Tole Aretz Al Blima, that God hangs the world, meaning God sustains the world, in the merit of somebody who's boilem piv b'shas meriva, somebody who shuts his mouth at the time of an argument or the time of anger. Yeah. So it's interesting. There you see the sages are saying, if you're angry and you keep it in, that is in the merit of doing that, God maintains the world. So they're not telling you, let it out, spill it out, just vent it. It might be very difficult for you.
But generally when people talk a lot, they get in arguments and discussions.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know.
Yes, I agree. I was also thinking along those lines, that a person is constantly speaking, constantly talking, so he's going to be he's vociferous and expressing his opinion, and he's bound to argue with people, and just because people have different opinions and so on. So before you know it, he's talking all the time, he's arguing something all the time, his mind is constantly running, his heart is constantly pounding, so maybe that's not particularly good for a person. I don't think it's really applying to somebody who, so it's an enigmatic statement, really, to tell you the truth. I wouldn't think it's applying to talking about words of Torah. Be quiet and don't speak words of Torah. On the other hand, it says, I was raised among the Chachamim, and they certainly were talking about the op-eds in the New York Times. They were talking about Divrei Torah, and still he's saying, I didn't find something good at Shtika. I mean, there's a teaching which says that a person is born and certain things in his life are measured. His days are measured. His steps are measured. His words are measured. And when a person fills his measure of words, it's up, finished. Shut off the lights. So perhaps this might be one way of explaining this as well, that it's good for the body to be quiet, because the person only has a certain number of words that are allotted him to speak, and when he uses that allotment of words up, he'll die. His life is finished, he expires. And therefore it actually turns out to be good for the body to be quiet and not waste your words.
So what words count in that list?
No, the important qualification is it doesn't apply to words of Torah. Yeah? Doesn't apply to words, and nor does a person's steps accounted for when those steps are steps towards a mitzvah, to pray or to daven, to learn.
Really?
Yeah, to the mitzvah.
So when I go to the gym, I shouldn't do Stairmaster?
I've often thought about that. It could be if you're staying in place, maybe it doesn't count. Huh? Yes, I don't know if steps are brought down in Chazal, but a person's But certainly, a person's words are measured, and therefore, now this rabbi is saying that applies even when you're speaking about mundane words, but not necessarily words of Torah. Nevertheless, you see, he said, even if it might not apply, strictly speaking, to Torah words, he still grew up among Chachamim, and believe me, they were not speaking things which were not Toradic. And still, he says, I didn't find something good for the body like shtika. So.
There's a hell shape like that.
Go ahead. What does it say?
Silent. I have not found anything better for a person than silence. A silent fool is considered wise, whereas a wise person.
What was that? A silent what?
Fool.
Yes, a silent fool is considered wise.
Whereas a wise person who is always talking. is considered a fool. King Solomon.
So one possibility is that yes, when he's speaking, so his body is constantly excited, in an excited state, and therefore that over time takes toll on his body. If he's constantly talking, then he's going to get into conversations where there might be difference of opinion, therefore arguments, which would even, as your point, even add more stress to the body, and therefore might not be particularly healthy. A person who, another possibility is that, like I said, a person who is speaking too much will expend his words, and ultimately that could shorten his lifespan, because he uses up words unnecessarily. So these are three possible explanations as to why the emphasis seems to be on the body.
Women talk about this. I mean, if they don't, they'll go crazy.
And still, still statistically, I think they have more longevity than men.
Oh, maybe. Yeah. Right.
So they say their words are more accurate.
Yes.
And our words are.
Yes. Well, this is a statement made by a man for men. Yeah, women. That's women. Women are from Venus.
I thought I took 9/10 of talk. Women took, and they left just 1/10.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. What a sexist comment.
Right. But I heard from Ullman, they have to talk, otherwise they'll go crazy.
Like he's saying that sometimes a person, a person he wants to express himself, and he doesn't express himself, so he represses these ideas, and it can be harmful for the person. So there are times, like you said, it depends. There are times when it could be important and necessary and healthy to express oneself and not pent it in. But if it's the sages did say that women have more of a propensity to talk than men do. If there are 10 measures of speech, women took 9 and left 1 for men. Given that idea, it's very nice and convenient that it's the women who generally spend more time with young children as they're growing up. Because if they grew up with their fathers, they just never know how to talk. Yeah. Or the women, they talk to the babies, they talk to the children, even if the baby doesn't understand. A man generally won't talk to the baby if the baby doesn't understand. I'm going to change your diaper now. Now, don't get upset. But a woman will do that. We're going to change your diaper now. Don't be upset. Mommy loves you. You're a nice little boy. It's going to be hot at first, but it'll cool. A guy would never do that. You wouldn't talk to somebody who doesn't seem to understand. But a woman will just talk to the baby, and the baby hears this, and that's how he learns how to speak. Right? If it were up to us, then our children. If it were up to us alone, then our children would be like. Imbeciles, they wouldn't know how to speak. Well, the women teach the children how to speak. Yeah. So, shtika mihadvarim. Yeah. That's one of the perhaps explanations that's associated with the pasuk which says, "Al titosh Torah simecha." Don't leave the Torah of your mother. Isn't Torah generally like a guy's thing? Why for Torah simecha? Point is that the women, through speaking with the children at a very young age, inculcate the children. We're talking about a righteous woman who speaks words of Torah to the children, Torah ideas and teaching to the child, accepted and incorporated into the child from a very young age. So he says, Now, V'chen Omar Shlomo Melech Alav Hashalom, and so King Solomon said, Gam Evil Machrish Hacham Yichashev, and even a fool who's quiet will be considered wise. Why? He quoted the teaching. Yeah. So why is this? Because a person who's kind of like reticent and quiet is viewed by people as being wise. Why? Because he measures his words. He doesn't say things unnecessarily. So he might be like a total airhead. That's why he doesn't say anything. But people, he looks intelligent. What's that? The story of your life? I don't know. A relative once said to me, "You're too quiet, boy. You should talk." Why? Because if you don't talk, people are going to think you're stupid.
Right, that's another thing.
That's what this person told me.
That's true too.
What? My response was, it depends on what you say. If what you're saying is stupid, so just because you're talking, it depends. If you have something smart to say it. If you don't have something smart to say, don't say it. That was my response.
Sometimes you have to open up people and get them to talk.
Yeah.
You know what's going on inside.
Okay, that could be.
I
don't know. I was also the quiet type. Even now, I teach and we say words of Torah, and I find that I enjoy communicating and I'm able to communicate words of Torah. But outside of Torah, I don't even know how to open my mouth. I'm not a talkative person by nature. Outside of teaching or Torah discussions, I'm not a talkative person by nature. So I remember as a relative once criticized me. You got to talk more. If you're so quiet, people are going to think you're stupid. I didn't quite understand. And now I see that's not the case. According to this, no. If you're quiet, people think you're smart. That's not what's quiet. But still.
It says something else in Pirkei Avos. One of the 48 ways of learning is in front of Talmid Chachamim. You should be quiet.
Like we see here.
Yeah,
like we see here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's the.
Scholars, you should listen more than.
Yeah, of course, because.
If you're higher than them, then you should speak. But
even if,
scholars,
but even if not, no matter how, let's say, wise or educated a person is, he knows what he knows. If he just expresses what he knows, he's not necessarily going to learn anything new.
Right.
But if he listens, he'll learn things which are outside of his knowledge, in which case he'll learn something new. Although, of course, a person does learn by teaching, but that's often not by actually teaching, but by communicating the idea and then interacting with people's response.
Right. Asking questions.
Yeah. Much I've learned from my rabbis, more from my peers, and the most from my students. Not necessarily by conveying the material to the student per se, but through answering the questions and addressing the issues that arise through discussion, through teaching. But that comes about then through listening. V'amar al-Chacham, and it was said by a wise man, Kisheni medaber, when I speak, who, meaning the speech, shall be, controls me. Because if I speak to somebody something that's not appropriate, that inappropriate speech will have sway over me. And it will cause me to actually have to subordinate myself in front of that person and ask him for forgiveness. But if I'm not speaking, I actually control myself from saying it, and from controlling anything. From hiding anything. So you see from here, it's better actually to not speak than to speak, in a way, because when a person says something, he's already now committed to what he said. And now he actually becomes bound by and therefore subservient to his words.
So he can't contradict himself later.
Yeah.
He said it.
Yeah. So it's actually better not to say anything. According to this, there's an advantage to not speaking, which is that it's non-committal.
Unless you don't commit yourself to what you said.
Yeah.
Said bli neder.
Yeah,
Then you seem like a hypocrite, but
yeah,
but
but
at least you're not.
yeah, yeah. But still, even if you say, look, I'll try. I'm not committing, but you've already committed yourself more than if you hadn't said anything.
It's true.
On the other hand, of course, there are there are times when it is important to say something and commit yourself to something. Amar Rabbi Seinu Zichronim Levracha, the sages said of blessed memory, Shnei Dekalogin, a decalogue. You know what a decalogue is in English?
Ten Commandments.
What?
Ten Commandments.
I don't know. Isn't there such a word? Check your iPhone. Yes, here it's translated as sanigorim, which means people who speak on your behalf. Advocate, thank you. I think there's a word in English, decalogue.
But wait.
You look it up on
I
dictionary.com?
don't have my phone. They're ringing.
Maybe it's the Ten Commandments, the decalogue. In any case, two advocates. Hayu omdim lifnei Andrianus Caesar. They were standing before Andrianus. V'echad melamed al dibur shu yafeh. And one was saying that speech is good. He was praising the power of speech. V'echad melamed al shtika shi yafeh. And the other was praising silence. Amar melech lo isoi shay melamed al dibur shu yafeh. So the king, this Andrianus, said to the one who was praising speech, Echata oimer. Amar loi, Mari. He says, how do you say such a thing? So he responded to him and he said, Master, Ullman adibur ech malachim mis malchim ba'olam. If it weren't for the power of speech, how could kings assert their rule over the world? Vech sfinois poishois liyam. And how could ships go off to sea? I suppose the point is you couldn't communicate what would be necessary for the preparations to launch the boat. Echa mesim nigmolim chesed. Yeah. How could the dead be nigmolim chesed? How could you could do chesed to them? But through speech you can, by remembering them and so forth and so on. Yeah. I mean, these were not Jewish people. But I guess even they had the idea of, recalling the dead and so forth and so on. Remembering the dead. Echa kolois mishtapchois. How could you possibly praise the beauty of the bride? Ech moso moton ba'olam. How could you engage in any commerce? So speech is a very powerful tool to fuel all types of human endeavors, without which it wouldn't happen. The king said, you've spoken well. So then he turned to the one who praised silence. Why did you praise silence? So he came to explain himself. Shut up. The praise of silence? How can he speak? He's praising. He praises silence, and now he's asked to explain his praise of silence. But
He can't talk. It doesn't work.
The one who came and he praised speech came and shut him up. Amar lo melech, lama satarto? Why did you slap him? Amar lo mari, said to him, King, I used what I praise to support the praise, namely speech. I use speech to praise speech. And now you're asking him to use what I praise to support his praise for his speech, to praise silence. So I slapped him. Audacious. You're using my tool to sharpen yours. Use your own tool to sharpen your tools. What are you using mine? He slapped him. Lo kachamar Shlomo.
He uses, what do you mean uses tools?
No, I use that word.
Yeah,
I use the
know,
word tools.
But what did he?
He just, no, what it means to say is, I praised speech.
Yeah, right.
Now I'm called upon to explain my praise of speech through the venue of speech. And that's consistent because I praise the value of speech. If he praises silence, so let him use silence to demonstrate the value of silence.
Oh, wow.
But not speech.
He's lost.
Yeah.
Now he's like,
Obviously he's going to have a good response here because we praise silence.
how do you-
How would you get out of this?
Right, how you-
What would you do? It's a nice. How would you get out of
It
this?
doesn't always work. You can't take these rules.
Maybe I would imagine that the story somehow he's going to be vindicated.
Yeah.
Lo kachamar Shlomo, Amar lo. So the one said to the other, let's see, Lo kachamar Shlomo, even though Andrianus was non-Jewish, he knew the teachings of King Solomon. Lo kachamar Shlomo, lo Amar Elokim, shetiye Yoshev v'shoisek kecheresh. Didn't King Solomon teach that God didn't tell you to sit and be silent like a deaf person? El Omar berov dvarim lo yechdal posha. Through a majority of words, one will not be withheld from transgression. Meaning, speaking a lot is going to cause one to transgress. Like you said, if you speak too much, you're going to get in trouble. V'hoisech sfosov maskil. But one who refrains his lips from speaking, he will become enlightened. Why? Because he listens more than he talks. A person can only say what he knows. He can't say more than he knows. But listening, he can listen to things which he knows, but also listen to things that he doesn't know. So certainly, he's only going to really be able to acquire new information through listening and not through speaking. Perush, hoisech v'maneh medaber b'chaveroi. One who refrains from speaking to about another person. Ein lecha gadol mi'Aaron u'Miriam. You have no greater example than Aaron and Miriam. Shehaber oila umashke beschus Miriam. The miraculous source of water rose and provided water for the Jewish people in the merit of Miriam. And these wonderful clouds of glory, they encompassed and protected the Jewish people in many ways, all in the merit of Aaron. But once they let their tongues loose and started speaking about Moshe, miyad nifru, immediately they were held accountable. Valkama inyanim hashechina mistalekes misrael, over many matters, the Shekhinah divine presence is caused to be removed from Israel, mishum shfichus damim, because of the spilling of blood, avodah zarah, lashon hara, idolatry worship, and lashon hara. So what do you see from here? At the end of the day, I guess the point is, he's not, when the one sage was praising silence, he wasn't saying that a person should be a mute. Point is, he's praising the quality of silence where one refrains from speaking when it's appropriate to refrain from. And that's actually better than speaking more than is necessary. It's better to listen more than to speak more. So the first sage was actually kind of maybe logically was correct. I praise speech, so I'm entitled to use speech to praise speech. But if he praises silence, let him praise silence to silence. Why is he using speech? The answer is that, of course, the praise of silence is not to be a mute. And therefore, you can use speech to praise silence, because even advocating silence does not mean being a mute. It means measuring one's words appropriately. One proper use of words would be to praise silence, and therefore use words to encourage silence when it's appropriate. I guess that's what we have to say. Okay. Maseh Rabbi Gamliel she'asa su'uda. There was a particular time when Rabbi Gamliel, he made a meal. He made a suda. V'nosan la'avdoi l'shonois levashel, and he gave his servant tongues to cook for the meal. Also mehen mevushalos. V'asan kashin v'rakin, so he cooked them, and he made certain which were hard and some which were soft. Hechnis lifnehem akashim, he brought before the guests the hard cooked tongues. V'chazav v'nasan lifnehem arakim, and then he gave them the softer cooked tongues. Kara la'avdoi v'amar loi, so Rabbi Gamliel called his servant, he said to him, why did you do this? Mem rakim v'chem kashim, some soft, some hard. Amar lo, he said to him, lo diacha she'akol min halashain, everything comes from the tongue. If a person wants, he can make his tongue soft. If he wants, he can make his tongue hard. It's up to you. Now, I guess in general, it's better to speak in a soft manner. I don't mean in terms of the sound, the decibel, but in a way, in a soft way. Although it might be sometimes appropriate to speak in a harsh way. But it's in our ability to control how we speak, and we have to choose correctly what's the appropriate way to speak given each situation.
So the softness, you're talking about the actual words, not the volume?
Right.
I think it's both. So the volume makes a difference. So if someone's really loud.
Yeah, but a person should speak more quietly and not speak loud, although sometimes it might be appropriate, of course, to speak loudly. But I think here the point is the tongue is soft, is referring to the actual word choice and the words that are used, not to speak with hard, abusive words, but to speak with soft, gentle words.
Right. Because it could be passive-aggressive with like a low words.
Yeah. It was said to a wise man, why are you so quiet? He said to them, I found that language, speech, is divided into 4 categories. Echad, kulonezek, 1, entirely harmful. Like people who curse other people and speak inappropriate, modest speech. The second category, it's harmful on one side. Like, for example, he praises somebody really only to get some benefit out of him. And through the praise that he's praising the one person to get something out of it, he actually gets another person angry who hears the praise of the one he doesn't like. And therefore, he causes harm to the person who doesn't want to hear this person's praise. So there you've got a good side and a bad side. Hashlishi, the third category, lo nezek v'lo toeles. It's not good and it's not bad. Not bad, not good. Gulun shall have like ridiculous things, not important things. Ech nivnas cholma plonis v'kach otzi alea, how such a wall was built and how much money was spent. V'sipuri malachim v'sarim, and all of the different stories about the things that kings and ministers do. The news. Politics. I mean, again, if there's some practical, pragmatic benefit to speaking about the news or politics, that's one thing. But gosh, just think about how many words are spilt a day around the world on news and newspapers. Just think about that. How many writers spill hundreds and thousands of words every day on articles which really, by and large, don't mean anything. They have no importance whatsoever. Because what you have today is going to be changed tomorrow, and what was done today has nothing to do with tomorrow, and it's constantly changing, and it's just to be up with the times, but the times are always changing, so you always have to just think about that. I never thought about it. Think about that. How many minds around the world are busy around the clock thinking about how many words they can spill about the news and the politics and sports and about fashion, about cosmetics and about perfume and about music, all the different things that people are writing about all the time. It's a huge amount of information. Like, why people were spilling those that amount of words on Torah, which are not changing, and they're real, and they're everlasting, and they're eternal, and they're positive. And what do you do with the newspaper?
In England, we serve fish and chips.
What?
In England, we serve fish and chips in our newspapers.
You serve fish and chips in it. Okay, that's that's a best case scenario. Yeah. Another scenario is you throw it in the can, throw it in the garbage, right? In America, what they do with it is they train dogs and cats where they should be doing their stuff indoors. That's where all of those thoughts and all of those ideas and all of those words and all of that ink and all of that effort, that's where it goes. To wrap fish, or it's filed in the circular can, I think they call it. Is that what they call it? The circular file? The wastebasket? Yeah? Yeah, trash bin? Or they use it for as cat litter.
I heard in India they can't sell newspapers, so they do it free now.
Yeah. Okay, that's because of the wonderful invention of the internet, and everybody's able to consume all of this voluminous amount of nonsense, in cyberspace. Yeah.
They give it down free.
Well,
That's the reason.
I think there's another reason, particularly regarding the newspapers you mentioned. It also probably has to do with the non-from religion as well. Is that every paper is so disgustingly politically, with their own political agenda, that even if you're looking for news, you can't find it because it's all just promoting the people's political platforms. So people just like they're disgusting. Well, I need that paper, that paper, that paper. It's all politics. It's all just to push people's agendas. Who needs it? V'sipurim malachim v'sarim. I'm not saying there's no value in knowing what's going on in the world, because to a certain extent, of course, what's going on in the world is in the hand of Hashem, like it says, Lev, Sarim, v'malachim v'day Hashem. But you don't have to read, all of these, these, hair-splitting dissections. Yeah, there's other stuff that's not important at all, right? But you can just read the headlines, and if you're going to do it, just the headlines is enough. The headlines, maybe the little thing, the blurb, but they'll go sitting there and reading the whole article. God, you have to know. Ahmed Abul Bajorani, the foreign minister of Jordan, awards a prize to Catherine Ashton because of her contribution to the, whatever. Who knows, whatever. I happen to have heard such a piece of news today. Some, I don't know, maybe it was the King of Jordan or someone in Jordan awarded Catherine Ashton some prize, like the Abdul Mukhtar Prize for whatever. Well, in any case, that's the third category of speech. Haravi, the fourth category, this wise man says, Shekula to'eles, it's all good, it's all beneficial. Kagon, HaTorah, Udvarim Shem Tluyim Ba, or things that are related to Torah. So, of the four categories of speech, right, 3 out of the 4 are not worth speaking, because they're either entirely harmful, partially harmful, or nonsensical. So, if you don't hear me speaking very much, it's because of the 4 possibilities, only one is worth speaking about, and that's when I speak. When I speak about that. You have wise men of the Torah who divide speech into 5 categories. Echad mitzvah. Hasheni nizar mimeno. Hashlishi nimas. Haravi'i ne'av. V'hamishi mutar. What does this mean? The first one is mitzvah, speech which is a mitzvah to speak. Hasheni nizar mimeno, speech that you should distance yourself from. Shlishi nimash, which is disgusting. The fourth one, ne'ahav, which is beloved. I'm not sure if that means in a good sense or a bad sense. Hamishi mutar, speech that's permitted. It's not a mitzvah, but it's not to be discouraged either. It's permitted. Oh, mitzvah. What is this? Speak words of Torah in Yirmiyahu. Nizar mimeno, speech that a person should be careful about. Kugon edus sheker, v'navlus pei, urechilus. I guess that means, this is forbidden. He has to distance himself from it. Okay? Giving false testimony, speaking immodest speech, or slander. Nimas, language which it might not be an actual prohibition, but it's certainly disgusting. Shein bo lo avera v'lo to'eles. It's got no transgression, but it's got no benefit either. Karov sipor olam, like the news. Kogon ladaber mizeh shenase kvar miminig malachim, or to say some things that are already done according to the kings, or so forth and so on. Kamed dvarim mi'inyanei olam, or things that are happening in the world. I don't know why it goes so far as to call that like disgusting, unless nimas is not a good translation here of the word disgusting. But it means a person should distance himself from it. Yes? Ne'ehav hu adibur shemeshabeach masim toivim umegane masim roim. That's good speech, it's beloved. It's speech which praises good deeds and which criticizes the deeds. The shabeach amase tzaddikim, to praise the ways of the righteous. Kedei sheyetivu minhagehem be'enei v'nei adam. In order that the ways of the righteous should find favor in people's eyes, and they will try to emulate this type of behavior. And to disparage the acts of the wicked. In order for people to be dissuaded from going in these bad ways. Hamutar, I think that's the fourth category, that which is permitted. Hu dibur shel schara the parnasa, words which are pertaining to business. V'inyan malbushim, things having to do with clothing, meaning not about clothing, not talking about commenting on fashion in GQ magazine, but you're talking about the words that you need to clothe yourselves, because that's a need that you have. So whatever speech is needed to acquire clothing. Inyan achila, and the same thing regarding food and drink, shar tzorchov, things that you need. You can speak about what's necessary in order to procure those needs. But somebody who at least minimizes his speech in these ways, in these matters, that's praiseworthy. According to the words of the sages, most things in the world have no need to be spoken about whatsoever. Aside from the things where it's actually explicitly prohibited to speak about them. Kagon, frivolity, scoffing, making fun of, chanifus, flattery.
Flattery's not allowed?
Right. We're talking about, flattery where you're basically flattering a person in order to get something out of him.
Like business is allowed?
Oh.
What is a business?
What does that have to do with flattery?
So if you're a salesperson, you gotta flatter people.
So you're flattering a person to get something out of him. That's not right.
Business.
You can praise a person if it's true.
False flattery.
No, it's like someone walks in, you're a salesperson, you're like, oh wow, nice
You have to
watch.
treat them nice.
So you can be a ganav because you're a salesperson?
What?
You can be a thief because you're a
No, it's
salesperson?
not a thief. I mean, it's like a nice thing they're wearing, whatever.
Yeah, being a salesperson is problematic. The old car salesman.
Insurance is actually.
Don't you need a car? We can give you a car.
Yeah.
You have to tell it. You have to
Yeah, you
show up.
But this is false flattery, no?
what's that?
This is false flattery.
This is talking. This not well. No, false flattery is certainly forbidden because it's just an outright lie. Yeah, here it's talking about flattery, even if it's true, but you're doing it in order to get something out of the person. You're not flattering the person to praise the person. You're flattering or praising the person only to get something out of that person. That's wrong. That's misleading. That's deceitful. That's wrong. That's what we're saying here. That doesn't mean to say that you can't flatter a person. Let's take another case which is permitted and then explore your case, which I think is kind of intermediary. That doesn't mean to say that you can't say something nice to a person when you think, for example, it'll make him feel good, make him feel happy, benefit your relationship, which is mutually beneficial. That's all okay.
Right.
Yeah. The problem is when you're using flattery to get something out of the person. Now, if your job is, for example, you're flattering a person in business, so it becomes a delicate line. If you use flattery as a tool, basically to extort from this person, so that's certainly wrong.
If you're
You have
building
to
a
find
relationship with them,
Yes, you have to find a fine line where the flattery is limited to something which would be conducive to developing or building a mutually beneficial relationship, so that you're not just extorting from this person, right? You're giving and you're taking. So it's kind of mutually acceptable. You say something nice to the person, he says something back. It creates a nice business environment, relationship, where there's trust and good feeling for one another, in order that this be mutually beneficial. But if you go and the salesperson, remember I once went with my wife to buy her something, and no matter what she tried on, the salesperson, oh my gosh, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Where? And most of it did not look good. But if it was all the most beautiful, then none of it could have been beautiful, because each piece was the most beautiful she'd ever seen, right? So it was just like disgusting. I said to my wife, I can't. We can't. I can't buy something like this. It's just not. The truth is, it was too expensive. So it was a good excuse to get out of the store.
No, the truth is the salesperson wasn't that good.
No. It's just like it was just like a turnoff. Just her whole attitude and approach was like everything she put on was the most disgusting thing I'd ever seen.
Right.
I said, it's not. I don't have a good feeling here, so we can't. It's not the right way. But let's go somewhere else. Yeah. So that's just like stupid. That's. Isn't there the old like Aesop's fable where the fox convinces the crow to the beautiful voice that she has, and because the crow has the cheese in his mouth, right? So that the fox is flattering the crow over the crow's beautiful voice in order to encourage the crow to open his mouth in song and therefore drop the cheese. Yeah. So that's what we're talking about. Yeah. You're basically flattering the person just to get the cheese, huh?
Yeah, but when the skills is strong, I think I mean that if you're allowed to polish up something to look good, let's say you have a dusty candelabra, you're allowed to
Right.
shine it up.
Sure, that's
Dusty-
fine, because you're showing the true value of the object. That's what he's talking about. You're allowed to praise the qualities of the object, but you're not allowed to.
It has a dial, has this function, that function.
But he's not. I don't. If I remember correctly, he's not talking there about flattery. He's talking there about gnevas adas. He's talking there about
Yeah, you're right.
fool people. So, kagon leitzonos, hanifus, v'sheker, that's deceit. U'mesaper lashon hara. All of this stuff, of course, is explicitly forbidden. Speaking lashon hara. Val elu harba yesh lichtov shar lekol echad b'fnei atzman lekaman. He says regarding these four, leitzonos, hanifus, sheker, and lashon hara. Over each of these four, you can write a whole chapter on its own, which he's going to do later on. Yeah, I don't remember, in fact, that there are separate chapters here on these things. On Sheker, yes, there is. On Lashon Hara, I guess there is. I don't remember on Chanifus, Nitzanos, maybe there is. Okay? So it's very, very interesting, this little section here on silence. You see, he's got quite a lot to say about silence. Okay.